The classroom was buzzing with chatter and crinkling paper as students settled into their seats. It was just another Monday morning at Riverstone Middle School, a school tucked away in a quiet suburb where most kids came from stable homes and knew little about what it meant to go without. But for 12-year-old Liam Parker, every day felt like a battlefield. He walked into Mrs. Darnell's 7th grade classroom, wearing the same faded hoodie he wore almost every day. His shoes were worn, his backpack frayed at the seams, and his eyes carried the weight of someone who had seen too much too soon. The other kids noticed. They always did. Whispers followed him like shadows, even though no one dared say anything too loud. Liam was the foster kid, the one who moved from home to home, the one with no parents at school plays, no one cheering at soccer games, and Mrs. Darnell, with her tight bun and eyes that missed nothing, was the kind of teacher who believed discipline mattered more than empathy. Mrs. Darnell stood at the front of the room, tapping her clipboard with a red pen. Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on Liam, who was trying to quietly slip into his seat. She narrowed her eyes, her lips tightening into a line of disapproval. "Liam Parker," she said, her voice slicing through the low hum of conversation like a knife. "You're late. Again. And I see you've decided not to brush your hair today either." The room fell silent. A few students stifled giggles. One boy in the back nudged his friend, smirking. Liam's cheeks turned crimson as he stared at the floor. He didn't respond. He never did when Mrs. Darnell targeted him. It wasn't the first time, and sadly, he knew it wouldn't be the last. His foster home was strict, his caseworker overwhelmed, and he had learned long ago that silence was safer than fighting back. Mrs. Darnell continued, "I suppose expecting punctuality or hygiene is too much. But then again, you don't exactly come from a place that teaches discipline, do you?" Gasps rippled through the classroom. Even the students who usually laughed fell quiet. The air grew heavy. Liam stared down at his desk, his hands clenched into fists. His eyes burned, but he refused to let the tears fall. What Mrs. Darnell didn't know, what she had forgotten in her arrogance, was that this week was evaluation week. The school board was conducting surprise classroom visits, and standing just outside the classroom door was Ms. Evelyn Hart, a senior member of the board and a longtime advocate for vulnerable children. She had heard everything. Ms. Hart stepped in without a word, her heels clicking sharply on the tile floor. Her eyes swept the room before landing on Mrs. Darnell. The teacher froze. "Mrs. Darnell," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Could we speak outside for a moment?" Mrs. Darnell hesitated, then nodded, her face suddenly pale. The door clicked shut behind them. Inside the classroom, whispers erupted. "Did you hear what she said?" One student murmured. "She's gonna get fired." Another whispered. Liam didn't look up. He assumed it was just another moment of humiliation, another adult who would look the other way. But outside, Miss Hart wasn't about to look away. She led Mrs. Darnell down the hall to an empty conference room and closed the door. "I just heard you publicly humiliate a child for his appearance and his background. Do you understand how inappropriate and unethical that is?" Ms. Hart asked. Mrs. Darnell crossed her arms. "Some of these kids need tough love. Liam, he's always late, he doesn't try." Ms. Hart's expression hardened. "Or maybe he's trying harder than anyone else here. Have you ever asked what he's going through? Do you know his story?" Mrs. Darnell faltered. "He's in foster care. That's all I know." "That's not all there is to know," Ms. Hart said. She reached into her bag and pulled out a red folder. She opened it slowly, revealing documents that made Mrs. Darnell's eyes widen. It was her own juvenile record, her behavioral reports, her placements in the foster system, her fights, her suspensions, her second chance. "You recognize this?" Ms. Hart asked. Mrs. Darnell's mouth went dry. "How did you—" "I was your caseworker," Ms. Hart said softly. "You don't recognize me because it's been over 20 years, but I remember every child I fought for. I believed in you when others didn't. And now you've become the person we were trying to save you from." Tears welled in Mrs. Darnell's eyes, but Ms. Hart didn't let up. "Do you remember what it felt like to be judged for things you couldn't control? Do you remember the shame? The fear?" Mrs. Darnell nodded slowly, her voice catching in her throat. "Then why are you inflicting that pain on someone else?" Back in the classroom, Ms. Hart returned alone. The students looked up, anxious and confused. "Mrs. Darnell will not be returning today," she said simply. "I'll be here the rest of the week." Whispers spread like wildfire. Liam sat frozen, unsure what had just happened. After class, Ms. Hart approached him gently. "Liam, would you join me for a walk?" They stepped outside into the fresh air. Ms. Hart knelt to his level. "You didn't deserve what happened today. And I want you to know that I see you. I've been where you are. I understand how hard it is." Liam blinked. "You were in foster care too?" Ms. Hart nodded. "And I was lucky to have someone who believed in me. I want to be that person for you." She handed him a business card. "This is my mentorship program. If you ever want support, help with school, or just someone to talk to, I'm here." Liam took the card. His hand shook. Over the following weeks, things began to change. Ms. Hart stayed involved. She visited Liam's foster home, worked with his social worker, and made sure he got the resources he needed. She found a tutor for him. She enrolled him in after-school programs. She checked in every week. Liam slowly began to thrive. He made friends. He smiled more. His grades improved. Other teachers started noticing too. They began to ask questions about how to better support kids like Liam. A culture shift began at Riverstone. Mrs. Darnell, after facing a full investigation, was offered a choice: resign or undergo mandatory retraining and mentoring under Ms. Hart's program. She chose the latter. For the first time in decades, she opened up about her past, about the pain she buried under control and discipline. She began to change. Years passed. Liam graduated middle school with honors, then high school. He applied to college, with Ms. Hart writing his recommendation letter. At his graduation, he delivered a speech that left the auditorium in tears. "To the foster kids who think no one sees them, someone does. And your story isn't over. It's just beginning." Ms. Hart watched from the front row, tears in her eyes. Sometimes the people who try to tear you down only end up exposing their own brokenness. And sometimes someone steps in at just the right moment to help you rewrite the ending.